This week on Inside the Headset, we are featuring the 2021 AFCA FBS Regional Coaches of the Year. These coaches include Cincinnati coach Luke Fickell, Arkansas coach Sam Pittman, Michigan State coach Mel Tucker, and UTSA coach Jeff Traylor. In this episode, these coaches detail how to use experience to build team leadership, highlight the importance of building culture through relationships, and reminisce on their personal stories from past conventions. But before that, a reminder that on February 22nd and 23rd, many of the speaker videos from the 2022 convention will be posted to the AFCA Digital Library. So if you'd like to re-watch one of the sessions or listen to one of them for the first time, make sure you are an AFCA member so you can gain access to all the premier content at afca.com. Now let's get inside the headset.
Hello, I'm Todd Berry, Executive Director of the American Football Coaches Association. Very excited to be sitting with these gentlemen, our four regional Coach of the Years. And I told these guys before we got on just how special that is, because it's very, very difficult, as you guys well know, to get one of these. And then secondarily, it's voted on by your peer group, the ones that actually know the game. And so I really believe this is a great honor, and so I want to congratulate all four of you guys on this, because I think it's significant, and I know you're excited about it also.
Absolutely.
What we're going to do today is just have some conversations about this year in particular, and maybe some impacts. And so, Coach Fickell, I'm going to start with you. And one of the things that I've kind of, in doing this with the other Roundtable coaches, we've got some really interesting answers. And I'd like to kind of get your feelings. This was obviously a very, very special year. Kind of had a special year last year in the breakout and all that. And I think that it's very unique when you have a year that becomes one of those ones that you're not going to forget, because there's different reasons every year why those things happen. And so I want, if you could, maybe explain why this year was so significant for you, and if you want to compare and contrast to other years, that would be great.
Well, I think that first and foremost, obviously, anytime you have a great year, it's going to depend on great players. Every year is a little bit different, like you said. I think the leadership is always a key. I've been very fortunate to be around some great teams from the time I started coaching until now. And I think the unique thing about this one was, I know the year before was obviously different with COVID and everything like that, but for us to have the opportunity to go to the Peach Bowl, to have the opportunity to play a Georgia team, we didn't win, so there are no such thing as moral victories, but actually it might have helped us take, in some ways, the next step. We end up losing a game very close, kind of at the very end, and we had some guys for the first time since we've been in the program that had a chance to make some decisions. You know, do I want to come back? Do I want to take that next step? We haven't had a whole bunch of that. Then you had those guys who could make decisions, basically I could come back because of COVID and things like that. So the way it ended there so close with a tight-knit team, we had, for the most part, everybody but one come back. And I mean that with our quarterback, obviously, that's where it all starts. Our quarterback made a decision after that. He was planning on going. He wanted to come back because he felt like there was unfinished business. We had a defensive end, did the same thing. But we had 5 seniors that had no intentions of having another year, that took that extra, so to speak, super senior year, and what they did and what they meant to us, and kind of, you know, set us ability to take that next step. I'll never forget. You know, a guy like Kobe Bryant for us ended up winning the Thorpe Award this year. Had no intentions of coming back. Had the opportunity. People told him he should go because they didn't know he could raise his draft status, but because of what it is that we had done, because of, you know, how he loved his teammates and what he wanted to do, and felt like there was unfinished business. We had a group of guys that came back to the year with different expectations, which is always, you know, uniquely different for us at least, and have never been out front. So had some different expectations and some, you know, maybe a bullseye in what we were doing. But those guys really kind of controlled the locker room. They led everything. We had our ups and downs, but you knew you were never far from the center because of a guy like Kobe Bryant, because of our quarterback and Desmond Ridder, that really, for me, I'll never forget the leadership and how those guys did it, but most importantly, why they wanted to do it.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating, and this is going to give me a good segue, I think, Sam, to you also here. I used to have a coach that, you know, when you do something and the expectations raise, he kind of called it the disease of me, where everyone starts becoming a little bit more selfish and they kind of start turning inward to saying, we won more because of my production and it wasn't all the work and the teams and all that. And Sam, you guys had a breakout year also. And one that where you kind of raised the bar the year before and there was a different expectation. And so can you talk about your team and kind of the specialness of that group this year?
Yeah, I think we won games whenever our COVID seniors, what I call super seniors, when they elected to come back. A little bit what Luke is talking about. I mean, we had 19 seniors, including the super seniors, on our team. And I think, to me, it was a little bit different of the way they approached it, because you know how it is, you go through your freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, you have a choice, maybe some people at the end of, but these guys really, really had a choice. It was, I'm going to go on with my life, go into the NFL, do whatever, or I'm going to come back. And it was really unique to see them work in the off season. And I think that kind of went over to the rest of the team. And we talked a lot about stories because we hadn't had a lot of success recently. And our kids bought into stories, trophy stories, whatever it may be. They bought into, I said, hey, let old man dream a little bit, and I said, I have a dream that we'd win the Southwest Classic trophy, and we try to be different, and we took our team picture in shoulder pads. I don't know, it's weird, but we try to be different. I said, let me dream here, and let's take a picture in our suits in the stadium with all three of these trophies. That was before we played A&M, and fortunately, we won that game. And then it just kept building for the year. But it started with the super seniors, and even before we went to our bowl game, we took a picture in the stadium in our suit with the three trophies, and then moved one in case we were fortunate enough to win the Outback Trophy, game. And so our kids really bought this more than anything. They bought into. We had the 4 Bs, which was bowl, Bama, boot, and I don't know who we played last. Oh, Battle Line Trophy. We had the 4 Bs that we went. Our kids really bought into something like that, and of course I know it can backfire on you if you lose the first one, and that's the problem with that. But it didn't this year, and the guys had a lot of fun with it.
Thank you, Mel. I was at your first game, if you'll recall. You played Northwestern.
Yep.
At Northwestern, and Pat Fitzgerald is our current president, and I always go to the first ball game of our current president. You guys were impressive. It was one of those things to where you saw some signs last year, I know, but you kind of built this thing a little different way, and kudos to you for doing that. But also, your kids, they played hard. There was obvious buy-in. So let's talk about your season and kind of some of the differences maybe between this team and other teams.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was the process started when I first arrived in East Lansing. It was really a culture shift, and it was during the COVID year, we went 2-5, but all of our staff, all of our players, the coaches, support staff, weight room, nutrition, everyone knew that we were on the right track. They believed in what we were doing. They believed in our process. They believed in our culture. And we knew that if we could just have a normal off season, conditioning program, and go through spring ball and go through the process, that we would have a good football team. And the thing that was really impressive with this particular group of guys is that we had a lot of newcomers. We had a lot of guys that came from the portal, and we had some high school guys, and there were no sharp elbows in the locker room. The existing players knew that we needed help, we needed depth, we needed some difference makers, and so they welcomed those guys with open arms. And so we had a unified team going into the season, and everyone bought into the process, and that was really the difference. There was I can't remember a time when where there was a coach or an analyst or someone in the weight room or a player, offense, defense, special teams that was not on the same page. And when you can do that, and you can play hard, and you're playing for each other, everybody on the same page, and you can accomplish a lot, and that's what we did.
Yeah, I noticed in that first ball game, as I mentioned. But I think I certainly have a challenge within your own team. But even those players coming in that you don't maybe know quite as well, trying to assimilate them too into where, I mean, you obviously had to get the right guys, the right transfers.
Sure. Yeah, you have to get the right guys, and we're looking for the right fit. And all of those guys that we signed basically off of Zoom calls. There was no visits, home visits or on-campus visits, but I think what made it work was that what we were selling the players in recruiting and trying to get them to sign up with us. Once they got to East Lansing and they became part of the program, they realized that it wasn't just sales job, it wasn't just recruiting, it was real. It was everything that we said it was going to be and more. And so there was even more buy-in. And I think all of our players, all of our coaches, all of our staff were just very grateful to have the opportunity to have a relatively normal year and to be able to put our best foot forward. And so we took advantage of it.
Jeff, incredible year, right, for your program. The extent that it went, how long it went, exciting on offense. And that had never happened in the program before. There was no history for any of this. And so I'm sure for a lot of your players who maybe, that might not have been their expectations when they came to UTSA, was to say, okay, it might have been. But bottom line is, that's a significant jump from where that program has traditionally been in the past, and obviously first time regional coach of the year at the program. So, Jeff?
First, thanks. I mean, I'm in my heart, I'm still a Texas high school football coach, right? And to be up here with these three guys, these guys are heroes of mine for many, many years, and always will be. So it's an honor to be up here, first and foremost. Second, it all started, my very first team meeting, December 9, 2019. Only 68 of them showed up, and I'm sure they probably weren't real fired up. And I just asked them a couple simple questions. If there's three things you could change, what would you change? If there's three things you'd like for me to keep, what would you like for me to keep? And what's amazing about all 68 of those kids had about the same three things they thought we needed to fix, and the same three things we thought were really good. And I think that went over big with them because I listened to them. I didn't go out on the road recruiting. I stayed in the weight room with them. I'm a high school football coach, right? We had to live with them back in the day. So I stayed in the strength room with Follow and those guys. I go recruit from lunch on. And where it was a blessing for me, Todd, was that's when COVID hit. And if I hadn't got a relationship with those kids by being in the weight room with them, I don't know where my team would have ended up. So we went through COVID, then George Floyd. It's not the perfect way to start off your college coaching career by Zoom, dealing with all those situations.
Yeah.
We were very blessed. We won some ball games, got to go to a bowl game, but very much to copy Coach Fickell is we lost to BYU by 7. We lost to Army by about 4 or 5. Yeah. And then we lost Louisiana Lafayette to Billy and them in the bowl game by 7, I believe. So those 3 really, really close losses. And then every one of my kids, I had 13 super seniors come back, 21 out of 22 returned. And going up to Illinois and playing, Coach B, who we have a lot of respect for, and then Memphis getting those wins early with all those kids returning, it just, the old snowflake kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I was just blessed to be a part of the ride, to be honest with you.
Well, it was special, no question. Luke, I'm going to come back to you. And obviously, this is our centennial, 100 years. Game is always going to evolve and change. As coaches, we want to be the leaders of that change. But I want you to reflect back on, we're all old enough here to have several conventions under our belt. I know that for me, I can single out a epiphany that happened for me. And it really changed the course. It changed my direction in my career. And it happened at a convention. And so I'd like maybe for you to share with the audience kind of one of those same type of epiphanies?
Well, I don't know that maybe it's as clear to me. I've sometimes, unfortunately, didn't make it maybe a few times. I don't know if so a lot of kids. I had 6 kids at home, so sometimes my wife would try to lock me to the door and not allow me out all the time. But I do remember one specific kind of situation or speakers. It was kind of like another roundtable. It was the master coaches, and it was Bobby Bowden and Lou Holtz.
Yep.
And I was probably 26 years old, 25 years old. Thought I was, on my way. I think I had just gotten my second job, and I was at Ohio State. So I thought I was, on my way to wherever I was thinking I was going. And I remember listening to those two guys speak back and forth, and just the experiences they had about what the game really meant to them, about the kids that they coached, about the things that they remembered. I mean, that for me, it wasn't X's and O's. Had nothing to do with X's and O's. It had all to do with about their experiences, the memories they had, but the kids, the young men that they coached. Those things, set in my head. And I remember Coach Bowden, one of the things that I never forgot is he said he never went looking for a job. Yeah. He said, I did my job. I did it as well as I could. And if things came my way, things came my way. And that was something that always kind of stuck with me. And I don't know Coach Bowden. Never got an opportunity to really spend any time around him. But as a 25-year-old kind of out there and listening to him, that was something that I know that stuck with me for a long time.
So you were having your own family convention with the 6 children?
Yes, we were. It was 5 boys. You could have your own little small football program.
That's exactly right. You're one short of having a 6-man roster. Coach Pittman, how about you? You and I are the same age. We grew up in the same environment.
Mine was, I came down here several times. I've been on 6 staffs that got fired, which meant you shouldn't have hired me because you might get fired. But I came down, I went to California, and it was my first big break because I was coaching at Hutchinson Junior College. I was a head coach at Hutch JUCO. And I went out there, and Billy Miller, this is coaching. This is what coaching communities about. Billy Miller let me stay with him, because out in California, I'd forgot my socks. I'd still to this day say I owe him a pair of socks, but I took his pair of socks. I went to interview with Charlie Sadler for Northern Illinois University. I was the worst interview. He asked me questions. I'm like, what? I didn't know anything about college ball. And he hired me, and it gave me my opportunity to start in coaching in college football. The next one was right across the street right here when we had been let go at North Carolina. And I was over there, and Butch Davis is having a little deal over at the bar, and I went over there, and Jim Chaney walked by me and said, hey, you want to come to Tennessee? And really that's what that particular job really helped me, because I walked into a room full of great talent. Jim was obviously a very strong offensive-minded coach. And then the next thing you know, I go over to Arkansas, to Georgia, back to Arkansas as a head coach. But the convention itself, you never want to come down here if you don't have a job, right? Because you obviously don't want to be unemployed. But when it gives you an opportunity to come down and meet different people, and I think people want to hire good people, and it gave me my opportunity, and that's how I got into college ball, from the convention.
Yeah, certainly having a network is always helpful.
Yeah,
right? It's always helpful. Coach Tucker.
Yeah, I just reflect back to 1997. It was my first year in coaching. I was at Michigan State. I was a graduate assistant for Coach Saban, and I had no idea what the convention was. I didn't even know there was a convention. And had a really good friend of mine named Tony Oden, who was at the time was a GA at Boston College. We went to high school together, and he called me and says, "Are you going to the convention?" I was like, "What's that?" He's like, "No, you got to go." So I was able to get a plane ticket down, but I didn't have a place to stay. And so, I stayed with him. But he was staying with a guy that was at BC, and he was K-Coach. I don't know if you guys remember K-Coach, but it was a kind of a website that listed all the open jobs and all that type. It was like the the football scoop of that time, and I was like, man, you're K-Coach? And he said, yeah, I'm K-Coach, and I couldn't. It was the experience was something that I didn't even know existed, and so. As we, the next day we go and, I'm sleeping on the floor, we get up, we go and out on the floor and see all the coaches. And I was amazed at how many coaches were just here at the convention. And the fellowship and, having a couple pops in the evening, with guys and meeting different guys and then seeing the speakers, and I was like, man, this is huge. It was bigger than I even thought it was. I mean, I had no idea, and I can remember saying to myself, I was just grateful to be in the profession. I was just grateful to have an opportunity just to be in, because I saw so many guys that were actually trying to get to where I was. I was a GA making $400 a month. I met a ton of guys who were just trying to get to where I was, and I felt very fortunate, and I still do, just to see, really what this profession is really all about, and all of the connections that I made at the conventions, and people introducing me to guys. I remember the next year, Brick Haley, he took me around and he introduced me to everyone that he knew. And he was telling people, hey, this guy's the best thing since sliced bread, and he didn't have to do that, but it was that's what the profession's all about, and so that's what I remember most about the convention.
Yeah, it's there's no question that when you come to the convention, you have, as you mentioned, also a fuller appreciation for the job that you have to, as you look at some of the situations.
Yeah.
But it is a good opportunity, too, to find one. So, Coach Traylor, same question.
I was a young assistant at Jacksonville, Texas, and I just remember being in the room listening to great college coaches, right? And I never really could see myself being that. I just wanted to be a great high school coach, right? But I remember taking notes, but I always saw, older coaches, older than my age now, but they were life learners. They were so excited to be learning. They'd be 60 years old and won all these championships and had so much success. And I remember at a very young age thinking, I wonder what that would feel like, to love a sport that much, at that age you're still dying to learn the sport. And one of those men was Dick Sheffield, who for some reason took a tremendous interest in me. And he shared a point with me, and he always taught this to me, that it's not about your wins and losses, Jeff. It's about how many men you make out of how many boys. When your career's over, it's how many of those, they're men. They're given to their communities, they're given to their church, they're given to their families, they're not taking. And I listened to him, and I still have that poem behind me. But I was still a young coach. All I loved was plays and points and scoring. And the day before he died, I had an idea about our offense that I couldn't wait to share with him. And on his dying bed, he died the next day. I told Coach, I'm like, Coach, man, I got this idea, this little no-huddle idea, blah, 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 blah. He looked at me and he said, Jeff, you still think it's about them plays. He said, it ain't about them plays, boy. He said, it's about them players. And he passed away like the next day. And I've never forgotten. So it wasn't so much an epiphany as it was just a visual, and an older coach poured into a young coach for many, many years. Yeah,
in 2001, I had kind of similar situation. The great Eddie Robinson was on our board at the time, and I sat next to him based off of kind of where we were sequenced for several years. And every time I would come to the convention, you would always find Coach Rob right there on the front seat, and he had his paper and he was taking notes. And you're right, we can always continue to learn, right? There's always another way to break the code. And he was finding it. That's why he was having success, besides just being just an unbelievable man. Well, gentlemen, speaking of unbelievable men, I am very proud once again to be here with you guys. I really am. What great seasons. You're great role models, I think, for our coaches. And during this time frame, as we all know, there's some challenges. And it's going to be important as we move forward. But as I had an athletic director tell me the other day, he said, listen, one of the things that I've learned over the last couple of years, he said, if you got a problem, you give it to a football coach and he'll solve the problem. And there's a lot of truth to that. And so again, congratulations on this award, and thank you for your time. It's been special for me.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset. If you heard anything on this episode that you would like to learn more information about, head over to afcapodcast.com, where you can find every episode and all of the corresponding show notes. While you're there, take a second to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for the show, please let us know by sending an email to podcast@afca.com. Make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter @InsideTheHeadset and tag it when you share each episode. You can stay up to date with all things AFCA by following the @WeAreAFCA Twitter account. Every episode of Inside the Headset can also be found on your favorite audio streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you are not currently a member of the AFCA, be sure to find us online at afca.com and apply to join over 10,000 NFL, college, and high school coaches from around the country who are striving to be the best they can be. With an AFCA membership, you gain invaluable access to the annual AFCA convention, the bi-monthly magazine, and the new and improved digital library, which contains thousands of videos and articles contributed by hundreds of current and former football coaches. You can also visit afcainsider.com to sign up for our free weekly email newsletter on the right-hand side of the screen. It comes out every Tuesday at lunch and is filled with great articles and stories written by many of the same coaches you hear on the podcast. It's geared to help you become a better coach tomorrow than you are today. Be sure to connect with me on Twitter @CoachMarioPrice, and remember, the AFCA is not just an annual convention. It is an association that continually promotes education, guidance, and networking. But it is also so much more than that. The AFCA is about celebrating the past and educating the future. It is about developing great coaches who will produce great teams and even better people. So invest in your skill set and impact today by engaging with the AFCA.